417 Drone and the Drone Owners Network doing a little testing with the new Mavic Mini. I've got it up in the air now, so I'm going to do basically a flight time test, some cold weather testing. Right now we're just right at 0°C, so 32 degrees. I ran through several different issues last night. I had problems with Android devices. I'll kind of put bits and pieces of that in the video as the drone's flying around. Alright, so I have unboxed the Mavic Mini. We've got stuff laying around different places here. Already having the first problem. The app has crashed 15 or 20 times. I've tried restarting the device, or restarting the phone, and restarting the Mavic Mini, and so far no luck. So that's the fun part of getting the first thing of something that comes out. I'll try reinstalling the app on the phone, see if that makes any changes. Alright, so still trying to get the Mavic Mini going. Fresh install on the app. We go through that menu, we get to here, try to connect to the aircraft, and close out. Oh, sorry for the... There's the welcome menu, and keeps closing out. So I'll see what other options I have. Alright, so I ditched the Android device for now. I'm running a Moto Z3 Motorola phone on Android. Everything's up to date on it, and tried fresh installs, everything. Just for whatever reason, I can't get the Android device to not crash the app. So I went and picked up an OTG cable, so it's got lightning on that end, micro USB on the other, running a Mav mount. So I get it. It's a great big iPad for Mavic Mini, but just trying to get things up and going for now. So first thing that came up with was firmware update required. Raise your hands if you're surprised. I don't think anyone will be. So I'll run the firmware update on the big iPad and see if I can't get flying. So running on the it's either an Air 2 or an iPad 5, not sure which. You can see it's a small screen. If you OTG it to an iPad, you can punch that and get the bigger. My headache now is, if you watch, there's about a full 1 or 2 second delay on my iPad, so I'm not really sure what other issue that I've got going on now. So still sorting it out. Finally got the firmware update to take. I'll have it outside flying hopefully here in a little bit. Alright, so far overall impressions, I really like the equipment. It flies really steady. Last night we got up to about 26 miles per hour max speed. It does have 3 different modes. The app is stripped down a little bit, so it doesn't have all the features that you have in the Go 4 app. Obviously, I mean, this drone has a different purpose, and I think for the most part everyone understands that. It does have a standard mode, a sport mode, and what they call a cine mode. The cine mode just kind of slows and smooths all of the different movements. So we kind of played with all of the modes a little bit last night. Again, it got kind of late and dark by the time we got through the app issues that we showed you there. So putting a little more time on it here. Let's see, we're just about 4 minutes now. Still showing 86% battery life. I know there was one user that had some altitude related problems, and their takeoff altitude was above 7,000 feet. Right here we're about 1,400 feet, so we did not experience the same issue. Ran the battery down to 5%, kept flying the aircraft at 5%, and even at 5%, I could still get max forward speed out of it, and at maximum speed it was not dropping like they had experienced there in the high altitude run. So so far, actually really happy with the equipment. The app is another story. I tried 2 different Android devices last night. Both of the Android devices were crashing, so we got forced over to an iPad. So we're running an iPad Air 2 via OTG cable with a Mav mount 3.0. Now the app isn't necessarily optimized for an iPad. It's more designed to be used with a phone. So there's a few issues with that. Currently, the iPad, running the iPad, we don't have any exposure value control on the video. Now other users are showing that if you're using a phone like it's properly designed to be used, they do have the exposure value change in the video as well. Now on the iPad, on photo, do you have exposure change, exposure value change for just automatic, but it also, you can switch it over to manual, so you can set you know, some shutter and ISO to change the brightness of your picture, still pictures only. But again, that's just if you're using an iPad. So still doing the time test. Let me cut back in the two different OTGs. So OTG is on the go, and essentially what a regular USB cable is, most of them start with a USB-A or a full-sized USB on one end, and what you have on the other end is some kind of a device connection, whether it's a Lightning, USB-C, micro USB, or something else. OTG cables typically have device connections on both ends. So the one that we're using today has a micro USB on one end, and it has a Lightning on the other, so we can connect directly from the Mavic Mini remote over to the iPad Air, and it's just a longer cable, very similar to what comes with it to connect to the phone, but that's not long enough to attach to the full-size iPad in the holder, so we had to get something a little longer. I'll show you something about the OTG cables. They're not all the same. Some of them are actually specifically designed for the Mavic style remote. If you're not familiar with that, the micro USB on the Mavic remote, on the left side of the remote, is a standard micro USB. However, the case is square instead of tapered. So let me click over and we'll show you the different types of OTG cables that we got in, and kind of some pitfalls with that. Okay, so outside we talked a little bit about the two different OTG cables. Now these are the two that we did receive, and you can see it's not going to focus on them very well, so I'll do the best that I can. Both of these do have a Lightning connector on this end, so nothing fancy there. Again, we're going to be using them with an iPad tablet, so that's what we need on that end. The other end, we need USB, micro USB, to go to the Mavic Mini remote. So you can see on this one here, see if we can get the light just right, it is tapered. Now that's your typical micro USB that will still plug into the Mavic remote. You just have to make sure that you get the larger side of the taper down when you plug it in. It will not, it's not reversible, so you cannot put that on the top. If you look in the plug here, it's not going to let us get close enough, but the terminals for the most part are at the bottom of the taper, so you need that at the bottom of the remote. Now here is the other OTG cable that we got. See if I can get it up there close enough to get the light across it. As you can see, this one is rectangular. It's squared off on the ends. So this was made with that different style plug. It works perfectly with the Mavic Mini remote, so there won't be any confusion. It since it is square, rectangular, it is much harder to try to plug in upside down. Luckily, they are both made the same way. So as you plug them into the aircraft, or I'm sorry, as you plug them into the remote, when they plug in, they both go down towards the device, just like the regular cables that come with it. And again, the only reason we ended up with these is because we couldn't get the Android device to work, and we needed something long enough that we could get plugged into, all the way plugged into the tablet, because the provided cables weren't long enough to get all the way up to the tablet plug-in. So that's a little bit about OTG cables. Okay, so here's a quick look at the app. Some things are similar, some things are different, as you can tell. Just the overall look is completely different. So bottom left, you can select the map view, and you can see the aircraft based on a map according to where it's at, where you're at, just like you could in the Go 4. You have your height above takeoff, and also your distance and speed. Now up to the top left, the arrow takes you back to the main menu, back to the welcome screen, where it says mode there. That's where you switch between your sport mode, your position mode, and your cine mode. So over on the right side, the first icon we come to is the satellites. You can see the number of satellites that you're linked to there. The next one is your Wi-Fi signal strength, and then you have the battery. The battery simply reads as a percentage of full, and we don't have the battery slider anymore, which is good and bad. Of course, it is. This is smaller than the previous with the slider, so it doesn't clutter up the screen as much. However, now you have to memorize your return to home values to know when to expect it to trigger the return to home, and also trigger the emergency landing. Next, you have minutes to 0. And then the 3 dots to the right is where you get to your menu options. Right below that, on the far right side, above the red dot, you can switch. That's where you switch from your video to your photo modes. red dot to take pictures, start and stop video, just like in the Go 4. The play button down below that, you can punch that and preview the files that you currently have on the SD card. Now, bottom right is where you switch the exposure modes. You have exposure value in the auto mode, or auto exposure lock, and that's in video. In photo mode, you can switch it over to full manual, so you can adjust the ISO and shutter priority how you want it to be for the shot. Now, the interesting feature that this has, down in the bottom center, this little icon, what it shows, you are basically the little red dot at the bottom. The cone extending from it is the direction that you are facing, and the other triangle is the aircraft. So it shows basically the location that the aircraft is in reference to the direction you're facing, and also the direction that the aircraft is facing. So if you punch the 3 dots up on the top right side of the screen, that's going to take you to your menu, similar to the Go 4 app. This is where you can do most of your changes, several settings that you're going to find in here. The very first one, they call it safety. Now, essentially what you get, you can see here, you can change your max altitude and max distance. Also return to home altitude, which is an important one if you're flying around trees and such, because the Mavic Mini does not have obstacle avoidance. You can update the home point to where the aircraft is currently located. That is your IMU and compass calibration settings there. Under advanced settings, it just shows you the emergency stop modes for the aircraft. You can get into remote identification towards the bottom of that. Now the second one is, they call it control. Now you can change the modes on the top left of the screen. You can also change them here. There's Cine, Smooth, Position, and Sport mode. This is where you can change your unit values, metric to imperial. Gimbal, follow, and FPV mode. If you're not familiar with that, the follow mode will try to stay level. FPV mode stays mostly level with the aircraft, so you get a lean in the camera as you're turning. That's where you do your gimbal calibration, set your stick mode, RC calibration, and at the bottom, linking the aircraft. The next tab over is camera. You can change it from 4.3 to 16.9 if you want widescreen. Shows you what you've got left on your SD card. Advanced settings in the camera, which is surprising, it actually does produce a histogram. You can set grid lines, overexposure warning. You can set a center point as well. Then your anti-flicker is typically just left on auto mode, video subtitles, and cache while recording. Cache while recording, if you're not familiar with that, will record pictures and video to the tablet while you're flying the aircraft and recording. It will also record to the SD card at the same time. I typically use that leave that turned off just so it doesn't fill up my tablet. The transmission menu is pretty basic. 5.8, I haven't messed with this much. Auto or manual mode, you can see here it will not let you switch that while the aircraft is in the air. And the last mode is About. About, you can name your aircraft. It lets you know what aircraft firmware you're on, the RC firmware, FlySafe database. That's where you can check the numbers to see what you're running, but also gives you information about the app. Battery charge, I believe we've flown this battery a couple times. It's still showing 0, so maybe that's something that's coming later. That's when you get your serial numbers for warranty-related items. So that is a quick look at the app. So we are still working through several little things that we're noticing with the aircraft, little glitches and things like that. So initially when we put our memory card in, it wasn't accepting or wasn't recognizing it. Now you can see we've got several more options over on the photo and video side of the screen. So thereby where you capture the button. The top one, right now we're in photo mode. You do have a couple of different options there. You notice it's got single or timed shot. Single shot is obviously a single shot photo. Time shot, we'll take one every 60 seconds all the way down to 2 seconds. So you've got some options there with the photo mode. The next one down, obviously video. You can see here we've got 25 and 30 frames and 2.7K. So a couple options there. In the 1080 video, 25, 30, 50, and 60. So we've got several options there. And here's again just showing you the problems that we're having with the exposure value. When we're on video on this particular app with the tablet, you notice as we adjust the exposure value, we don't get any change. So I don't know if it's a glitch with the app or just because of the setup that we're using, but that's not working properly for us currently. Back to the menu, you notice you got photo, video, and it does have some quick shot modes. These are intelligent flight modes, gives you a few different options. And here's another little glitch. Of course, we clicked on it, it started going to the menu. Let me click on it again. There. So it actually went into the menu. You can see the top one is Droney. Droney flies away from you and kind of climbs, goes, you can set your distance there. Second one is Rocket. Rocket just goes straight up. You can set your altitude that you want there. Circle, you can highlight an object and it will circle around it, kind of maintaining distance. It's marginally good at keeping it in the center of the screen. And then the last mode that we have is Helix. Helix, again, keeps something in the center, circles, but it also goes away from you and climbs in altitude. So that's some stuff that we didn't see previously in the app that we do have available for photo, video, and smart mode options. All right, flying in cine mode, have the aircraft down a little closer. Obviously, you can see it there. Right now, we are at 20 minutes and still showing 30% battery life. So I'm really impressed by the battery life of the aircraft. It seems like a lot of the early drones, the big headache was that you couldn't fly it very long on an individual battery. So this should satisfy a lot of your flying needs as far as flight time. We're currently still in cine mode. And that is full left deflection on the stick, so you can see how slow it's turning. So it's really smoothing out the yaw movement. Fore and aft movements are a little faster, but significantly dampening the movement of the aircraft to help in a cinematic mode where you're trying to record video. It is really windy right here by the building, so we're picking up some crosswind. So we'll get it back out of here so we don't ruin our battery life. Okay, so you can hear the standard DJI low battery return to home. So we're right at 23 minutes and 20% battery life when it triggered that. So again, decent flight times. We're gonna go ahead and run it down a little farther, see exactly when it triggers the return to home warning like you get in the rest of the apps. And the one thing we want to talk about now is the aircraft status indicator. So Mavic Mini, just like other DJI products, it does have on the lower aft portion of the aircraft, it has a status light indicator. You get several different indications from it as it's flying. It gives you a quick way to know the status of the aircraft without looking down at the app. Typically what you're going to get is a green flashing. Green flashing means that everything's good to go. You've got GPS connection. Yellow can mean a handful of different warning messages. And as we have red here, red is a critical message. In this case, it's going to be a significant low battery. So just a neat little way to look up at your aircraft and tell the status of it without having to take your eyes off. All right, so we just hit the 5% critical low battery warning. That happened for us at 27 minutes in this particular configuration. We'll keep it up in the air just a little bit. It does typically trigger return to home. We were flying just right here where we're working at, so it didn't sense that it needed to return home because it thought it was already home. And a lot of the other apps, and this one as well, you can cancel that return to home if you choose to. It pops up on the screen like it normally does, and you can accept or cancel that return to home. Okay, learned something else cool about the Mavic Mini today, and it's regarding charging of your batteries. Just realize, and not a lot of people do realize, that the same 5-volt feed can have a different amperage, which is the amount of power that's actually coming to the device. When we first unboxed everything, of course excited to get it in the air, just plugged in. What we have here is the DJI 3-battery hub that comes with the Mavic Mini Fly More combo. So I just grabbed the USB cable that we had here plugged into the desk and plugged it into the side, and that's what charges the batteries. Not a big massive battery charging setup with this thing. It's actually pretty simple. But not thinking, this table actually has an AC adapter and 2 USB outlets built in the top of it. You plug it in the wall. I didn't even think to check the amperage output of that device. So as you can see how slow the lights are moving here. We'd sat here for a while today and not really made any headway getting those batteries charged. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch it over, and this is actually the one that was provided by DJI. So see how fast the lights are going now? So it's awesome that DJI actually gives you a visual indicator that you may be slow charging your batteries. So if you're charging your Mavic Mini batteries here in the, that's hard to say real fast, in the multi-charging hub, comes with it in the back there, that big white brick is supplied by DJI, and it appears to be at higher amperage output than what we have built into the desk here. So if you're charging and not getting anywhere, you may not be putting enough power into that hub. Okay, so we're back out again, grabbed a new battery, gonna finish up, run a few different tests. We'll show you kind of the speed that we're getting here. I did try to calculate the actual wind direction, so we should be running directly perpendicular to the wind, so shouldn't be getting any benefit from the wind. We'll kind of do a couple different directions and see how that turns out. All right, so there's you testing P mode, so just standard positioning mode. We'll switch it up now, see if we can't run one in sport mode. You can see acceleration is quite a bit faster. Top speed that we're getting here is right at 28 to almost 29 miles per hour. All right, and last thing that we're going to run is cinema mode, which really isn't a speed mode, but just to give you an idea what the speed difference is between the three. So they're in cinema mode, looks like just around right at 9 miles per hour. That's what we're getting for maximum speed. Okay, and the last thing that we're going to do here before we close this one out, we're going to kind of simulate the problems that they were having in the mountains with at high altitudes. We'll run it down to less than 10%. I believe they were having problems around 20% with the aircraft. Actually, when they were trying to come back with the low battery, the aircraft would start descending and they could not even return to their location. So what we're going to do is run the battery down to about that 10% mark, and I'll show you that here, and again, they were at 7,000 feet. Right here we're about 1,400 feet. So I'll show you, we'll get some speed going. I'll leave it in sport mode at 10% and show you that even in sport mode at a decent acceptable altitude, you're not going to get any drift or descent out of it, even when you have a low battery situation. Now we're down to 10%, currently 101, looking generally the same direction, 9% battery, so we're definitely way into the low battery setting, and we'll see what we get. So generally the same direction, got a little bit of Wi-Fi lag there. 26, 27, got the cancel return to home. So we'll get off before we get too far. So 26, 27 miles per hour, so really similar. There was a firmware update immediately as soon as we got it out of the box, so they may have changed things around a little bit to allocate a little more power to altitude. There's no way to tell for sure, really, other than just we didn't have problems with it today.